Gouache is like the best paint that has ever existed, and it's all I use now. Now, if you don't know why that is, or how gouache works, or what it is, or what it's for, then you've come to the correct video. Gouache has the best qualities of all the different paints. Gouache operates a lot like watercolor, and watercolor is characterized by its ability to move freely, to be applied to the canvas any kind of way, and for it to move after it's applied. A lot of people use watercolor because it dries very quickly, but it allows you to get a lot of colors on a canvas very quickly as well. It allows you to apply a lot of form, to have a lot of movement, a lot of speed, a lot of versatility in how you use it. But the downfall of watercolor, as you might see here, is that it can be very thin at times. It's very hard to get opaque colors with it. Even if I was to get a whole lot of paint out of here and try to apply it as smoothly as possible, it's still very see-through. Gouache, on the other hand, doesn't have this problem. Gouache is a lot more opaque. It moves like watercolor, it activates like watercolor, it's activated by water, just like watercolor is, and it has the same movement as watercolor, but the opaqueness of gouache is much stronger. Gouache also dries matte, but as you can see, I've gotten a lot more pigment out of a little bit of gouache. You can also layer it, and if it's in liquid form, you can really just use it out of the tube for more opaqueness. Now, the less water you use with gouache, the more static it's gonna be, and the more water you use with it, the more gouache flows, just like watercolor does. Now, the downside to that is the more water you use, the thinner gouache is, but you can also use that to your advantage if you're trying to blend or other things like that. Now, the way that you apply gouache to a canvas is the same way, using watercolor brushes of sorts. I use synthetic ones because personally, I don't feel the need to pay the price for real hair in a paintbrush. And honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about tiny animals being used for their hair in paintbrushes, so I tend to just lean towards synthetic brushes anyway. Also, the supplies I use in this video will be linked in the description if you so wish to cop them. Another interesting thing about watercolor is that once it is dry, which as you can see, that part is dry, it can be reactivated, which is a good or a bad thing depending on what you're trying to do with the paint. Also, gouache has the same ability. It can be reactivated after it's dry. Depending on what color of gouache you choose, the opaqueness and the appearance of it may vary. However, they will all operate the same, which is just like watercolor. The ability to move paint after it's dry allows you a lot of freedom. Now, if you're trying to keep all your colors in place, you're gonna have a bit of a harder time. But the way you use gouache depends solely on you. If you're trying to blend, per se, it might be useful that the gouache lifts up when you're done using it. But there's also the existence of fixatives and other things like that that you can spray on canvases to keep your stuff in place while you continue to work. Just look how opaque that block is. Now, if I try to do the same thing with watercolor, it just doesn't appear the same. The last thing that's so great about gouache, and my personal favorite aspect of it, is the fact that you can layer it any way you want to. You're not limited to have to work light to dark like you would with watercolor. You can actually stack gouache paints on top of each other without consequence at all. Let me show you what I mean. So here I have some white, and apply a bit of water to it, and watch. I mean, that speaks for itself. The fact that I can put this on top of the blue, have minimal transfer, and it show up just as good. Now let me show you how white watercolor works. So here I have some white, and putting it on my brush. Now look what happens when I try to layer it on top of the watercolor. Look how much fainter it is. In fact, white watercolor seems to have a bit of a tint to it as well, instead of it just being purely white. In conclusion, gouache is just better on all fronts. Not to hate on anybody else's medium, but this just speaks to me, you know? So if you want to know more about gouache, I'll be posting more videos like this on my channel, so stay tuned. And if you have any questions, my comment section is open for all questions related to this stuff. I'm gonna continue to be using gouache because it's my favorite and I'm biased. Also, this is what I was able to create using purely gouache, so just to put it in perspective of how great it is, okay? Anyways, I hope this video was helpful. Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more videos like this, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!